Hi, Noah. Welcome to the Quantum Alchemist Mastered podcast. I'm so happy that you're here today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Rosalia.
Well, guys, just to give you a little backstory, and Noah will get into his own journey, but Noah actually supports and has a lot to do with the podcast being on air, continuing to function, getting in wonderful guests, and also booking me to be a guest on other podcasts, and just a whole lot more that he does that he doesn't even have to, but he's that extra. I consider him to be a very good friend and a part of the family. I love that you're here. I don't know why we took this long to do this, but that's okay. Divine timing. Noah, tell me a little bit about your own personal journey, not just what you do for work, but your journey.
Mm.
Anything that comes up for you.
Mm. Yeah, I was born and raised in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I had a wonderful childhood. It was very much a picturesque, middle class American childhood. My dad's a small business owner. He runs a real estate company. My mom was a homemaker. She was a stay-at-home mom. And I was homeschooled, actually. And for me, homeschooling was wonderful. I think homeschooling works well for some people. And it worked wonders for me because I've always just been a self-starter. And I've always had such an interest in things. So homeschooling allowed me to focus on my interests at an early age. And I was raised in a very evangelical Christian home. And the one thing that I'm very grateful for in that is I always knew what community was. I was never really lonely in that sense growing up. I grew up at the church that my family attended. There was always some church event every evening, every weekend, it seemed. So I'm very grateful for having that experience. And, I was just kind of the nerdy, funny, geeky kid growing up. I didn't have deep friendships despite being surrounded by community. So, in that respect, I did experience loneliness from a young age. I struggled with my appearance. I've always struggled with my appearance when I was growing up. I was struggled with weight. Especially when I got into the teenage years, I had some skin issues, and it was really hard for me during my sort of coming of age to find an identity, really. I mean, I never did sports growing up when all the other, young men my age were doing that. But one thing I did do was community theater, and that was like a silver bullet. I loved community theater. It gave me a way to express myself. And theater's so beautiful because you take a cast of 30 people from every age, every background, and you bring them together and they create magic and you create something that people love. So that was my kind of first foray into performance or doing anything really. And, I was 16 years old and I was shadowing with my dad because I thought I would go into real estate with him, and we would listen to podcasts during our drives together. And he said, Noah, why don't you start a podcast? So he bought me the equipment for Christmas one year, and it actually sat in my closet for 2 years before I did anything with it. So I started my first show about Vikings because I've always loved history. That's been like my thing is history. I'm a huge history buff. So I started a show at 16 called The History of Vikings. My first guest I just cold emailed was a professor of medieval literature at Oxford University. And within 5 months, the show was getting 50,000 downloads a month. I um, traveled to Europe because of the podcast. I was flown out as media. I was flown out to Toronto to do an interview on a History Channel show. I wrote a book about Viking battle tactics for a big military history publisher. And from that, um, well, I should say, and that was like the first time in my life that I finally felt like I had something that was mine. And then from that, I started helping other people realize their dreams and find their voice through podcasting. And that's a lot of what I do today. So that's just a little background.
Let's Let's peel back on the onion a little bit because I didn't know a lot of this stuff. So this is so cool to know that about you. Thank you for sharing and for getting personal. That's really what I love to have on the show. Like ask questions that normally we don't go into in other podcasts, just very kind of on the personal side. So when was the last time you did theater that you feel so passionate about?
Oh, it's probably been a good 3 years now.
Yeah, I love throwing out these little things out there. Because I say this because it happened to me with art. It came into my life. I don't can't even paint a head with a stick. Like that's how bad I am, right? But it came into my life a couple years back. I left it there kind of on the side. And now it's full blown. And why I say this is because when you were speaking about theater, I just could sense that you were in this completeness and this awe state and this flow state when you speak about it. And that's the way I feel about art. And I really would love to encourage people to explore whatever that is, whatever gets you into that flow state. Um, I feel that goes beyond just the act itself.
Yeah.
For me, is a connection with the divine, and just kind of downloading whatever consciousness, allowing consciousness to flow through me into that blank canvas. And it's a wonderful therapy. So, just as a side note, theater may be something to go back around
I,
into.
I love that. I totally received that.
Thank you, Noah, for being open to that. So, Noah, you talked about religion a little bit, and I that's something I always love to touch on. How
Yeah.
has your view on religion in regards to your own path and your own journey kind of shifted? Or do you still attend the same church and stuff like that? Or how's that coming along for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, like so many, your belief system is solidified when you go through diverse or when you go through adversity and you go through some dark nights of the soul, right? So of course, that's what happened on my own hero's journey. So I started the podcast at 16 and I was loving it. I was loving it. And I, in hindsight, succeeded and developed on the business side really quickly. And I started my company, Profit with Podcasting, a few years after I first got into podcasting, and I was helping others succeed through their podcasts. And I love this work. I love this work. And back then, it was like the only thing that I had. I put my identity into my business. And that's tricky not to do when what you do for a living is also your passion. But my, I guess, hyperachiever saboteur um, really kicked in those subsequent years. One thing I think that it might sound trivial, but it's worth mentioning is I experienced a lot of bullying growing up. I was bullied for my weight. I was bullied for my appearance. And remember, it's not necessarily what happened to you. I think it's how your brain interpreted it. And that was really hard on me. And I also grew up around a lot of affluence, I would say. The communities that I was a part of, the church communities, the even just other communities that my parents put me in programs, was where a lot of the, I guess, wealthy families would send their kids. So I was exposed to this, and those were the kids that were bullying me. So something in my brain, some program was formed saying, you know what, Noah, you might not ever be the most physically fit, you might not be the most attractive, but if you can just succeed in business, then people will respect you. So that's what I did. Um, my business grew super successfully. I, moved into a wonderful apartment, on the water. I was traveling to like 4 different countries a year. I, had so much abundance, but I was just working nonstop. I had an office that I rented downtown, and I would go there at like 6 a.m. and I wouldn't leave till 8 p.m. And that was all working, but it was like the only thing I had going on. And then um, anybody who knows me knows that I'm a pretty apolitical person. I'm not really interested in politics so much, but one of the things that I realized is, you know, Noah, like your business is going well, but you need people to respect you. I just, that was like my yearning. I just wanted to be respected by people. So I decided to run for city council in my hometown of De Pere, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of Green Bay, about 25,000 people. And a friend of a friend was a Wisconsin state legislator, and I made friends with him and donated to his campaign and networked, and he really became my mentor. And I ran and I put everything I had in that race. I mean, thousands of dollars of my own money. I personally knocked on over 2,000 doors, and it was a nonpartisan election. Um, and I just put everything I had into that race. It became my identity. And during that time, I had gained over 60 pounds in like 6 months. I was drinking all the time, every single night. I would just drink. Um, and remember, like, I cringe when I say this now, but that was where the ego overcame. I thought that if I ran for city council and hung out at the cigar lounge every night like the successful person that I am, that would make me respected in the eyes of others. And I remember then finally the election happened and I lost the election. We got like 40% of the vote. And I was just so crushed. I spiraled into the darkest depression ever. And subsequently, 2 weeks after I lost the election, my tax advisor called me on tax day of that year and said, Noah, um, you had a great financial year, but it seems like you were mismanaging your money and you owe the IRS $44,000. And just like smack the loss, the financial, kind of catastrophe. And I was just in such a dark place. I was at a rock bottom. And, I can share on my, recovery process, but to answer your question about religion, Rosalia, um, that's when I first even started contemplating my own personal relationship with the divine. Because up until that point, I had lived my life through the lens of ego. I had got caught up when I was growing up in, the tradition and the ritual and that sort of thing, and what to say and what not to say. And I had lived my life like that. I mean, I was just really doing everything I was doing for the appearances of others. And it wasn't until I was totally like hit rock bottom that I finally started to contemplate my own relationship with the divine.
Wow. That's where I wanted to get to. But you know what? The kind of run around and backstory you gave us, it's essential because in one way or another, most of us have been through the same journey. Maybe slightly different, personalized and stuff, but I went through the same rabbit hole, kind of like same high achiever pursuit
Yeah.
of the ego, until I hit my rock bottom several times, not just once, just to make
Mm.
sure. I
Yeah.
yeah, just to be sure that I was shaken up enough to wake up.
Right.
And still, it's a constant death and rebirth cycle that we go through, and we get to know ourselves and the divine at deeper and deeper layers, and just kind of like a 360 kaleidoscope. We're just kind of like, readjusting and looking at things in different perspectives. So I do want to touch on your recovery journey,
Yeah.
because to me that is, we encounter defeat, period, in life. Like you said, is not so much as to what happens to us, but how we interpret that, how we alchemize that, and how we use that as stepping stones. There's a really cool quote or a piece of information I heard somewhere. I cannot recall to who, but credit to the author of this, which was, life is understood backwards and lived
Yeah.
forwards. Yeah.
So
And
true.
that really resonates with me after my near death experience, because I was able to have a life review, definitely did understand a lot more kind of backwards as to what had happened, and just not giving up on life, not giving up on your journey, regardless of whatever defeat or failure that you we may perceive, because we don't necessarily have the whole picture in this micro expression per se. So I would love to hear a little bit about your recovery journey. I think that's really going to help me personally, because I'm going through
Yeah.
especially a weight loss journey, and I kind of want to go about it the right way, because I've done so many tricks to lose weight rapidly, and then
Mhm.
how we know how that ends. So kind of
Yeah.
like something more sustained throughout time. So I would really love to hear a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. I think that when we're in those dark places, we're able to hear God a lot better sometimes, you know. And that's where I was at. And it was a long and arduous process, I would say, the recovery. But I was in conversation with God, and I was in conversation with the God that has always been with me and lives inside me and is all around me. It wasn't the God of my parents or anything like that. And yeah, long story short, I had two good friends, two clients that saw that I was suffering. And there was an event in Texas, and they said, Noah, we need to get you to this transformational event for men. And it was very much about sort of the masculine journey and overcoming trauma and that sort of thing. And in hindsight, it really put me on a good path of recovery. I took what I needed to from that experience. But I would say since then, like I've even grown further and become even more sort of open minded with my own relationship with God and so forth. But one of the things that they did at that event is they helped you realize that everything in your life, the good and the bad, you brought forward, it was all your fault. And that was really hard for me to accept, but it also was peaceful because if I created this mess, then I could resolve it as well. You know what I mean? It eliminated that victim mentality, and it made me realize that okay, I can turn this around. I can get out of this. Um, so that's what I realized, and I remember after the event, I had been introduced to some wonderful people. One of whom is our mutual friend, Dr. Tara Perry. And it's funny because I've been working with Tara for over a year and a half, just on the business side. Um, and I had seen all of the great testimonials that she had gotten from her clients and all of the lives that she had changed through her hypnotherapy practice. And I remember I called her one day and I'm like, Tara, I want to do your process. And is there any way in the world that we can like do our first session today? And she said yes. So going through like RTT, hypnotherapy, connecting with your subconscious mind, having a conversation with yourself helped me realize why I had made the decisions I made. Because up until that point, I never really paused to ask myself, why did I do this? It just I thought it's what I needed to do. And I realized that I was operating off of the programs that I had developed when I was a child. Like I was still that hurt little boy who had been bullied all these years later, you know? And a friend of mine has a t-shirt that I love, and it says, "The only diet that works is self-love." So after I did my process with Tara, and we did over the course of 3 sessions. It was funny. Our first session was about authenticity. The second session was about being authentic, and the third session was about manifestation. So it kind of took me through that journey. And you know what? I didn't join a 12-step program. I didn't join a weight loss program. I didn't sign up for anything like that. Just all of a sudden, there was no desire to not do the things that no longer served me, when I had like hit some of those things at the root cause. So, yeah, to answer your question, Rosalie, it was a long journey filled with different guides. That event was transformational, working with Tara was transformational. Um, but yeah, that's kind of how that happened.
Well, thank you so much for bringing that knowledge into the space. And I love what you're saying about communicating with yourself, with your subconscious mind, kind of uncovering what programmings are running underneath, our decisions, our habits, things like that. Lately, I've been working a lot with DNA upgrades, and I feel like a lot of us are capable of, well, all of us are capable, but just if you're actively kind of looking into it, of remembering how to recode and change our own DNA for the different things that we are looking for. And I've been definitely almost every day focusing on those habit changes and those things like that, and recoding and remembering how to work with this divine intelligence that we are. Already we already come with everything we need. We just kind of have to kind of learn how to do this. um, but it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that and for bringing light into our childhood, our programming, our subconscious mind, and kind of asking and looking for those answers within ourselves, really. Yeah, that's beautiful. And self-love is, I've found in my personal journey, is definitely closely related with everything, with the life that we are co-creating with the divine, and the reality that we get to experience 100%. So Noah, tell us a little bit about exactly what it is that you do in regards to podcasting, or I don't know if you do also do any production or anything else that you, because you're multifaceted. So I'll let you
Yeah.
explain kind of what it is that you do.
Yeah, my passion is podcasting. I had started my first show, as I said, when I was a teenager, and I have hosted like six different podcasts since then, and I love podcasting. I've produced podcasts for Facebook, Alibaba. I've had such a fun career, and I love doing this. So my company is called Profit with Podcasting, and I help people produce and monetize podcasts. I also help people get booked as a guest on other podcasts. And the reason I'm so passionate about what I do is because I can honestly say that almost every good thing I have in life, I can trace back to podcasting in some way. I mean, just lifelong friends. I was just in Iceland earlier this year, staying with a friend that I had met through my podcast. Lifelong friends, clients, connections. It's all through podcasting. It's been my way to express myself and talk about what I'm passionate about. And I just really want to help other people build their network and build their businesses through podcasting as well.
That sounds beautiful. And I'll give a live testimony since we're
Thank
here.
you.
That's okay. It's my pleasure. So Noah has been with us. Okay, I don't know the time frame. But it's been with us for a couple months now, and there's definitely been a shift in the stats of the podcast, in the kind of podcast that I've been able to get booked as a guest on, and the guests that you've recommended to be on the podcast. Definitely very high quality, and as you say, a lot of the people that we come in contact with, they're not just focused as clients, but we do form um, very good friendships. For example, I was just on with Sam Cross. We hit it off right away. We clicked, and we text almost every day, and we're just in constant communication.
That.
I want to go up to Canada and visit. So it's really cool. And that just happened out of you connecting
Yeah.
us, being the communicator with everything, and putting us together. I mean, that's the beautiful synchronicities of the divine working its magic
Yes.
through each of us, through all of the connections.
Yes.
So we're very, very blessed that you are a part of our family, really. That's how I look at you.
Oh,
Um,
thank you.
so thank you. And guys, I highly, highly recommend Noah if you're thinking, if you've got a story, if you're thinking about just sharing or starting something, you're scared, you need some guidance, reach out to Noah. He's super cool and he'll take care of everything and guide you through the whole process and just explain everything. So it's been a pleasure and I'm looking forward to continue working together. So thank you, Noah.
Oh, thank you, Rosalia. Me too. And this is really a full circle moment for me joining you on the podcast because whether you know it or not, you are, I would say, a spiritual mentor to me, seriously. And just, being a part of Quantum Alchemist Master over the last few months and helping create this content has been, I would say, healing for me. And I'm so passionate about this work. You know what I mean? This soul work. It's what matters when I think so much that we focus on really doesn't. So, yeah, no,
Wow,
thank you so much.
that's very powerful. I feel like that's a good kind of way to end it if that feels all right. I don't know if you can share again, maybe where people can contact you, best ways to reach you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, my website is profitwithpodcasting.com and my email is noah@profitwithpodcasting.com.
Beautiful. Thank you, Noah. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you,
Thank you
Rosalia. The
so
pleasures have been
much.
all mine.
Thanks.